Have you been at a place where you've been wondering, like, there has to be more to life? There is something down on the inside of me that doesn't quite feel right. May I suggest to you, it could be that you are not able to live in the full liberation and freedom that God has designed for you. And if you might just by a slight chance fall into that category, you want to make sure you stay tuned as we unpack what it means to live a fully free life. I am attorney Jamila Moore, the entrepreneur's attorney and business strategist, where I help you start, structure, and grow your businesses while legally protecting your business, your brand, and your profits. Y'all, stop sabotaging the empires that you want to build because you haven't protected it. Okay, that's my spiel. Y'all know how it goes. But today we have Coach Brittany Wegner here. Now, she is a certified life coach whose passion is to lead others to the freedom through inner healing and connection to their true self. She does this by helping people break free from unhealthy cycles, unhealthy patterns, so that they can live their life filled with peace, joy, and love. Y'all, if you want some more peace, love, and joy, you know you're in the right place. Brittany's hunger is to share this work with others due to her own journey of inner healing, where God helped her break free from unhealthy cycles and patterns of shame, judgment, and self-hatred. Brittany believes this is because of her firm foundation in her faith that she is able to share the fruits of her journey with you. Everyone, let's welcome Brittany. Brittany, anything you want to add here that I may have missed?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. You've got it fully covered.
Yeah. So one of the things that I feel like you mentioned, or as we were talking about you, is just your firm foundation in faith. And it's something that is huge for me. And I believe it's something that's huge for many of the people who are listening to us. But it doesn't mean that that was always the case for them. And so, as you think through that and talk about that, how did you get to a firm foundation in your faith?
Oh man. I would say the best way I can describe it is I had to hit rock bottom first.
Mm,
Those are the words that I would use to describe it because I had to, for lack of a better term, come to the end of myself and relinquish everything that I was holding on to and turn it over to him and realize I don't have what it takes to decide what's going to happen in my life. I can't control it. I don't have any say over it, really. I mean, ultimately, I have the say over myself, but I can't control things outside of myself. So it was really about relinquishing that and just surrendering to what God wants to do with my life and what He planned and purposed for me.
Well, Brittany, I think that the people are about to get to see your expertise in action today, right? Because if I'm honest, control is something I'm working on. If I'm honest, surrendering is something I'm working on. And it has not been the easiest thing for me, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
gone through life and I have had my one plus one, A and B, next is C. And it's just like, that doesn't work if you're going to live free. So, okay, you hit rock bottom
Yep.
and you've learned to relinquish control and surrender. Now, what does, on a practical level, relinquishing control really mean? Because I know it's somebody out there like, God runs my life. He's the author and the finisher of my, they got all the words, but
Mm-hmm.
no practical action. So what were your practical actions to relinquish that control?
Ooh, man. I mean, if we're getting real honest in here, we can get real honest in here. There was a piece actually that I was hanging on to. So there was one piece that I was like, I trust you, but I'm going to hang on to this just in case. And ultimately, I had to, and I just had this knowing of like, I needed to let it go, but I didn't know how to let it go because I just trusted my own ability to keep it, and I just wanted it as a backup, like a just in case God's plans didn't work. I wanted my B plan, I wanted that just in case plan. And really the Lord had to work on my heart and be like He essentially had to say, I'm not going to give you your next until you let this go. And so I really had a choice of like do I still want to keep hanging on to this and remain where I am, or do I want to relinquish this and trust whatever the next is that he has for me? Because I couldn't move forward without letting go of my secondary plan, my just in case, my safety net plan.
Well, I mean, you are coaching us already. You are coaching us already because that secondary plan signifies you don't have trust. Then you're telling us that sometimes if you don't let go of that thing that you have the inclination you need to let go of, but you hold on to that, you cannot go to your next level without it. And so some of us have been waiting for breakthrough. Some of us have been trying to really grow to a new place and space in life, and we can't because we haven't let go.
Yep.
And as you were talking, the thing that stuck out to me in my own journey of learning to live fully free, because I think it's a continuous process where you have to keep surrendering and keep surrendering and keep surrendering. I'm reminded of, and this must have been it was a pivotal moment. The moment where I knew I would only be able to lean and depend on God for my financial security because he was calling me off my job.
Oof.
And that was a moment where you would think, well, if I surrender here, I don't ever have to surrender again. I surrendered it all. Okay. So talk to me and talk to the audience about how have you had to surrender again and how it felt after surrendering after the rock bottom. Like, I surrendered already. What else do you want? More surrender.
The best way I can describe it for myself is a temper tantrum. I mean, literally, I didn't want to give it up. And then after I did, I said, I hope you're happy. You have everything. You have everything now. There's nothing else. It was like me throwing a temper tantrum. But that's what I love about God is like, he's not afraid of our big emotions. He understands our heart. Like, he knows our heart is to surrender all to him. We just struggle with our fleshly desires of wanting to have the safety plan, wanting to have those backup things. And so it's not too big for him, but I will tell you, I threw a temper tantrum before I released it and finally gave it up. But again, that was kind of like you were saying, that was after I picked it up back up again. So I said, okay, I trust you. I let it go. And then I picked it back up again. And then I kept this repeated pattern, this repeated cycle of picking it up, letting it go. And eventually he had to say, okay, we're getting to the point where this is where you're going to be if you keep choosing to pick this up. And so that's when I literally had to relinquish. But again, it wasn't without a temper tantrum as a part of the process.
I love that because sometimes I feel like I get direction in my life and it's like the little kid who pouts and throws their head back. And I'm just like, seriously, like, are we about to go here? And, I'm working on my reactions. I'm working on my emotional intelligence and getting it intact. But it's a for real thing. And I'm happy that you're bringing that out because sometimes we don't allow for ourselves to have space to have human reactions to big God things.
Well, and I think other people make it look so easy. People in the faith, it's like you never hear about their big reactions. You don't hear about, some of that deep stuff that they had to get through. It was like, no, you just hear I surrendered and did this and da-da-da. And it's like, well, what did that look like? And for me, I can honestly say it was messy. It was very messy. But that's how you get to the freedom on the other side. You have to be okay with the mess because you know what the breakthrough is on the other side.
So that's great. You got to be willing to get through the mess. And if you think about who are key people in your life or partnerships or even people that you may not have known that helped you get to this place of living in the greatest level of freedom to date that you have?
I would say, that I truly believe like God puts people in our life at the times and seasons that we need. And also that like even when we're born, if we're not, we're not all born with perfect families or perfect parents, but he knows who we're going to be born to. And so even like the neighbors, or he'll put other people in our lives, a teacher, a principal, whatever it is that helps meet a need that maybe we wouldn't have been able to get. And so in my rock bottom, he actually brought someone that was a coworker from years ago back into my life, and she brought me to her church and just took me back under the fold because I had stepped away, and just kind of brought me back into the flock and just got me running again with the Lord. And so I think so much of it is about that process and that journey, and he's already got a plan for you and already got people aligned for you, and you just don't even know. You just don't even know. You just get to go along for the ride.
No, that's actually really good. And I was talking with someone earlier about my journey back to like being in the fold. And it's like you would bring that up, and it was literally I would, visit church every now and again. And one time I sat next to this lady, I believe in December 2015. I sat next to this lady, and over the course of 4 years, she kept up with me to the point where she now even keeps up with me still to this day. And that's how I kind of just, came to a place of like knowing God better, a place of knowing myself better, and a place of like letting go of what I thought I knew to even be able to connect with people in the fold. Right. And so I want us to kind of lean in here because there's probably someone who's listening. And I think sometimes when you are on your path, and I want to say that when you are on your path is your path. And so when you compare that against people who may seemingly have had straightforward paths, you will discount yourself and or feel some sort of shame or condemnation or guilt or something like that. If someone came, into your office, onto your Zoom and said, "Hey, I'm feeling this shame, this condemnation. I'm not free at all." How would you go about walking them through that?
Yeah, I mean the biggest sort of key that I utilize is something that I like to call heart work. And so like our heads remember one thing, and we tend to solve things logically. That's kind of the way our Western culture is, but our hearts remember another. And so a lot of times what'll happen is, we're like in our heads, we're like, this is done. Like I already worked through this. I don't know why this keeps popping up. I don't know why I'm repeating this cycle, this pattern. I don't know why I'm feeling this shame. And a lot of it is our heart trying to speak to us and tell us that there's something else going on. There's a deeper root there that really hasn't been processed or worked through. There's emotions or a need. Most of the time, it's one of two things. It's a need that didn't get met or pain that didn't get comforted. And so by working with your heart, you get to figure out what that is and then bring the Lord in to meet that need and get that pain comforted.
I really love that. A need that didn't get met or a pain or trauma that didn't get comforted. And that just makes me think about I guess I do a lot of development. I do a lot of development. I'm going to own it right now. So
I think we're all developing as we go.
Hey, how much have you done this week with your development? So I was in a community of women, a community of wives, right? Some of them married, some of them single. And in this community of wives, the head, who's the visionary, she brought out this feelings wheel. And in this feelings wheel, she had the primary feelings, then she had like the next level feelings, and then she had how these feelings really show up in our lives. And it made me think about the fact that sometimes we don't stop and we're in bondage because we don't stop to really identify the feeling that trauma has caused, the feeling that not having that need met has caused in our lives. And so you hit something that's really important, because I remember me going into like a kids counseling office as an adult trying to identify feelings because I had learned to push them to the side. And how does that hurt people or hinder them from living fully free?
Oh man, that's a big part of my story too. I had decided as a child, like I didn't even know. So between 0 to 12 years old, that's our development stages. And so we're trying to figure out life. We're trying to figure out what's going on. And oftentimes though, if things happen, say we get, traumas happen, we might decide then to turn off our emotions because we don't know if we're not given the tools or the skills to deal with the emotions, they feel too big. And so we'll actually shut down our hearts, turn off our emotions, and decide to operate only logically because that's an easier way. Then I don't have to feel it. I don't know what to do with this pain. I don't know what to do with this unmet need. And so if I only operate logically, I don't have to actually deal with what that is. And so then we shut down those emotions. And even in my own inner healing journey, I had to go through a process of literally looking at a feelings wheel and being like, okay, because I only connected to two feelings. I was either mad or I was okay. Like those are the two feelings. And so I was like, wait, there's more. There's more than two feelings. And so I can entirely relate to that scenario of, shutting down the heart and just operating in logic because it feels safer. And so what we do then though is we end up, as we start to have these big emotions then, because we have those unprocessed things going on in our hearts, is we then shame and blame ourselves. Oh, you should be over this. I thought we already solved this. Why is this still coming up? We kind of beat ourselves up. And so a portion of that heart healing process is actually walking through self-forgiveness with yourself, because we spend so much time beating ourselves up. And it's like, wait a minute, then I take whatever that trauma was and I'm compiling and I'm adding to it by shaming and blaming myself, when it's my heart just saying, hey, I still have this. I still haven't been able to actually deal with this pain. And we just shame and blame and compile. And so, like I said, a big part of that journey and process is the self-forgiveness, that we can say, you know what, what they did was bad, but then I added to it. And I'm so sorry. So sorry that I shamed you. I'm so sorry I blamed you. Because a big portion is just restoring ourselves back to our own hearts and getting restoration and connection again with ourselves.
So good. So good. That self-forgiveness piece. Mm-hmm. And then like walking through just the self-awareness, self-identity, and always being at a place where you're going to rediscover that so that you can break free. Because one of the things that I feel like sometimes we may not fully understand, that our levels of living fully free is dependent upon our level of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so if we always are developing, if we always are doing different things, then that means that yesterday's knowledge could be today's bondage. Mm-hmm. And so if we are not sensitive to when we are using an outdated system, an outdated belief system, we will unintentionally live bound because we haven't updated our knowledge, updated our belief system, updated our identity. Assistant principal Jamila could not show up here and do this today in this way. Right. But if I want to remain as assistant principal Jamila, this is the Jamila that's going to be here and have to deal with things that shouldn't be because I didn't update. Mm. And so do you have any practical tips and steps on how we can go about, just constantly reflecting and then moving and updating, whatever it is that I'm saying?
I love it. One of the things that actually came to mind as you were talking is, as a part of that self-forgiveness, what we often do is we take the knowledge we have now, which is more advanced, and we apply it to ourselves back then. And so we shame and blame ourselves by saying, well, you should have known this, you should have known that. But the truth is, at that time, we actually didn't know that. And so we may have actually been updated with our knowledge and in our development and the things that we do to gain more skills. But we then take it and we beat ourselves up because we assume we should have known it back then. And so a big portion of the entire process really is self-compassion. And that's something that just completely shifted my entire being, because I used to be a really pessimistic person. I was negative. I was always hyper vigilant. And it's like I was looking for danger everywhere. And so I was just constantly on alert and looking at all the negative things, because then I could keep myself safe. And that's part of that kind of control aspect of my own being and my own process that I had to work through, because if I could control everything, then I would be safe. But what I didn't realize is that me wanting to control my external world was really because my internal world was so chaotic. And so I had to actually go through that self-awareness process, because I had to make sure that I actually cleaned up the chaos inside, because I have no control over what's external. Like I can't control anything outside of myself. So really what I needed to do was fix what was going on inside.
Now, you might have just broken the internet. I think she just broke the internet, everyone. Because as I told you, I'm having some, control. I like the 1+1. And you said the reason why we're so hyper vigilant on external control, because there is some internal stuff that we are not dealing with, right? And so what could some of those internal things be? Because sometimes we just don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know someone is having an aha moment right now, like, oh my gosh, what's really happening in here that I want to project it out there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say for my own journey, like I said, it was a big learning process for me, but just because of some things that happened in my childhood, I actually turned all the shame and blame on myself. So I operated in a lot of self-hatred. And so I would just beat myself up all day, every day. Like I should be doing better. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I'm not good enough. All those negative things. And all of that has to do with the fact that we all have an inner judge or an inner critic inside of our minds. And what we need to do is actually get familiar with that voice. So we need to understand, okay, wait, when that voice comes up, because it's going to use the most common tactics, most common things that it does. There's going to be repetitive tricks that it'll say. I know for me, it was like, you should be doing all these things. Like I was constantly never doing enough. And it was from this root of I'm not enough. And so I had to keep doing to be enough. But the thing is even though I kept doing and kept trying to do, I couldn't ever do enough, because there was actually no measure of getting to the point of being, okay, now you've reached it. Now you're at the point of enough. I couldn't ever reach to that level or that point. And so really that for me was a eye opener, because I needed to realize that, okay, I'm the one who's actually sort of beating myself up and driving and pushing myself. And all it's doing is burning myself out. And so I needed to stop that, get familiar with that judge, so that I can instead flip it to discernment. Because when you operate in judgment, you operate then typically in shame and blame. That's going to lead then to negative emotions. But if you operate in discernment, it's going to help you get curious, and that's going to lead you more on the path of empathy and compassion. And so you really just have to get familiar with that inner critic, that inner judge, so that when the judge comes up, you can go, oh, wait a minute, this is my judge. I'm not going to operate in that. Let me get curious instead. What's going on in me? What's going on in my heart? So that I can get to the root of what that is and apply compassion. Like, oh, it makes sense. This reminds you of some other instance, or this feels like when you were 5 years old and this, you had to clean up your toys and you didn't want to, whatever it is. But oftentimes it's a memory. It's something that, was a pain that we had in childhood that is a reflective, a trigger that's coming back. And it's reminding our hearts, wait, this isn't the same scenario. We're okay.
That is so rich and it's so good on so many levels, because for people who are hyper judgmental, it's a helpful reflection to help them see that they operate more on a negative side in life. Mm-hmm. And then when you say with discernment comes curiosity, and you have the opportunity to have more positive feelings in your life and more positive experiences. And so here, you are really breaking down a pathway to freedom for a lot of folks. And one of the things that I really am hearing from you is like, sometimes we have to just sit down and life map where we've been.
Mm.
And it's when we go to that life map of where we've been and we identify those little points, those little pains, those little pivotal moments. Because even if it was a good thing doesn't always mean that you handle it well with your emotions or you even internalized it as good.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go through those moments, that's when you can start to figure out whether you're judging that moment or you need to have discernment with that moment. And so I think she gave everybody homework. I think she gave everybody homework that we all should be out here really dive, at least putting 3 big moments in our past and then just deep diving what was associated with that moment. And could it be that that moment is driving us today when it's supposed to be behind us?
Yes, yes. And so much of it is just kind of looking at that and looking, like you said, looking at the moments, looking at what, it's almost like counting the cost. Like what did this situation cause me? It's looking at that and the thought that I had after it and the belief I formed from it. It's kind of looking at the cost of that situation. And then when you have that, you're able to sort of account for it. You can process through it and then you can let it go. Because a lot of times those situations are things that we actually haven't fully grieved. We haven't fully looked at. Especially like we talked about earlier with a fresh lens and being able to say, okay, you know what, at that time, I did the best I could. It's that self-compassion of like, this is the scenario. This is what happened. It cost me a lot, but this is what I learned from it. This is how I grew. And I did the best I knew how at the time because the information I have now is not the information I had then.
Right, right, right. And I just love this. And you and I both are entrepreneurs. We're in entrepreneurial communities and things of that nature. And I just want to connect the dots here for entrepreneurs because this whole journey to more is really about building the whole entrepreneur. And you can't think that you can have money and not build yourself because then you get to a place where you have money, but you're sick.
Yes.
You have money, but you're not well. You're successful, but you don't have healthy relationships with healthy boundaries. And so in this community, we're going to be holistically whole, well entrepreneurs. And so how does not dealing with this and trying to live your most fully free version of yourself hinder folks who are in a space of entrepreneurship?
Such a great question. I think I think what it is really that's the lens that we're looking through and that's the lens that we're seeing life through when we haven't processed these things. And so we are hyper vigilant because we're on alert to make sure that we don't have to go back through it because we're pain avoidant. Like nobody wants to go through pain. That's not a fun thing to go through pain. But as the Bible tells us, in this world you will have troubles. You're going to go through pain. You can't avoid it. It's inevitable. And so by kind of cleaning up your lens, you're able to see things differently. You're able to see things more clearly. And that's going to help you make better decisions. And those better decisions then are just going to help lead your life, both personally and professionally.
So, y'all, it comes down to cleaning up that lens. What are you seeing so that you could, clean up your life and clean up, your professionalism? Because one of the things that you have to get used to as an entrepreneur is rejection and or disappointment.
Yes.
Because there's going to be a launch that does not turn out the way in which you think it should. Look at life happening. There is going to be, look, we just said there's going to be a moment where you are disappointed. And this could literally be this moment right now, especially if you suffer with perfectionism like I have, right? A recovering perfectionist. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. And you will go down that path of judgment. Rather than discernment, right? And being curious and really figuring out like, okay, What can I take from this moment? What can I learn? And that's one of the things that's really important for entrepreneurs and people who have entrepreneurial minds. If you are a leader in an organization, if you are a leader in a church, wherever it is, you have to be solutions oriented. And with that comes the reality that things are not going to go the way that you plan. You just said in life we will have troubles. And so when that trouble comes, you need a plan of action to maintain your emotional wellness, your mental wellness, and to walk in a space where you are not offended. Have you had to work through anything of like, I'm actually learning how not to be offended, because if I'm offended, I can't live free?
That's good. Yeah.
Have you worked through any of those moments?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, there's a couple of different tools. We talked about looking at your inner discerner, your inner judge, so some of those sort of things. The other thing really is, I kind of like to think of all these things as like helicopters, right? Like they're always flying around looking for a place to land, but it can't land unless it has a place to land in your heart. And so if it does, that means there's a reason that it's there. Like if you have a landing pad for it in your heart, there's something there that you allowed that door to be open to. And so, I mean, what I would do is just look at the root of that again, and just kind of do some of that heart work of like, okay, what does this remind you of? Like, because everything really is an inside job, because if we didn't have that landing pad, something could happen and it wouldn't be a big deal, right? We'd be fine and we'd just move on, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But if it does, or if we do find ourselves getting offended and that sort of thing, there's something there. There's something that's going on. Like this is a little bit different than the question you asked, but I'll just give an example of like when I was starting to operate in like fear and doubt and having a landing pad for that. I remember I had some medical things going on and I went to see the doctor and they were like, you know what, you should probably have the surgery. It's going to be best because of these complications, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I didn't want to have the surgery at all and was not excited about it. And then God just spoke very clearly to me. And he said, well, who told you this stuff was actually going to happen? And I thought about it and I was like, well, actually, no one did. The doctor said it could, but they didn't say it was going to. And so really what had happened is I had a landing pad for the fear of it happening. And then that created everything else that came after it, which was me saying, oh my gosh, I have to have the surgery. I don't want to. And just like kind of running that spiral. And so another kind of safety net when your thoughts are kind of going awry is looking at, wait a minute, who told me this? Or, who's telling me that I should be offended by this? Because like in my scenario, that was fear. And I don't want to take my instruction for fear. So why, I don't want to listen to that. So I'm going to reject that and say, okay, wait a minute. No, actually, no one did. And I'm not going to listen to the fear that it's going to happen. I'm going to do what I feel led to do, which is not to have surgery. And so that's another great question. And that, that's one that was in Genesis when God asked Adam, who told you were naked? It's a common question of just saying, who told you that? And you can look at the source and then you can decide if that's a source you want to have leading you and guiding you in your life.
Coach Britt, me. You just broke down so many major keys. Like, you have to listen to whatever that source is and decide, like, what source do you want guiding and leading you in your life? And another key that you just dropped that will open so many just doors for folks is what I took away from your situation was saying, okay, this is what I'm hearing, but what is God's truth about this?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could stop being in such a rush, we would be at a better place where we would know God's truth about a situation. And then we can operate from truth rather than whatever it is that the seed that the source is trying to give us.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think it's hard because in this life, so much we're kind of on autopilot, right? Like we're just kind of like, okay, next, okay, this is a thing that came up. Now I got to deal with it, and we're trying to move on. Especially as entrepreneurs, because a lot of times, or solopreneurs, you're the only one. Like you're moving and you're going, and you're having to make quick decisions. And so we forget though that we always have a choice. So we can choose how we want to respond to whatever that is that's in front of us.
Yeah, that's really, 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 really good. And I think that the thing that I'm taking away from this life coaching session, y'all, if this is what she's doing on here, I can only imagine what she does when she gets you one on one and really, reins you in to live fully free. But it's the reality of we are living too fast now.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, we wonder why, people didn't have cancer. There wasn't so much cancer back in the days. There wasn't so much this, so much that, so much this. And they lived slower lives. Like they had to walk a lot of places. So as you're walking places, you get time to think. There were no radios for you to play with in the car. There was, the TV was only in one place. And so now we have sped up our lives and cluttered our lives, and it's kept us from this place in space of true freedom.
Mhm.
And we don't even realize it.
Mhm.
What do you have to say to that? Because I can see the wheels turning. Let's go.
Well, and I would just add to that, and connection to ourselves, because we're just going logic and we're solving everything, which is why then our hearts are saying, okay, wait a minute, I have a problem. So the only way to communicate a problem to you is by big reactions through emotions, or the body reacting too. And some of that's in sickness because we're pushing ourselves so hard and our body is exhausted. And so the only response is to get sick to force us to rest. So much of it is about really connecting with ourselves and being able to listen to the cues that our body and our hearts are giving us. Because, yeah, to your point, I mean, we are rushing, we are constantly going, getting the next thing done, moving to the next thing. It's a fast-paced world, and unless we slow things down, we're not going to be able to listen to the tunes that we have in our hearts and in our bodies.
That that is so good. For people who may have gotten the shock of their life today, um, what do you say to them to help them take the first step in really deciding to live fully free?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the I know we touched on it a lot, but self-awareness is going to be key. You really want to get in tune with who you are, what some of those trigger points are when you're using your inner judge versus your inner discerner. If you have a landing pad for something, for rejection or something else, looking at the root of that, it's really going to be about understanding you, because aside from God, you're the best person who can know you. And so you really want to get in touch with you. And at the end of the day, you're the only one who's going to be with you for the entirety of your life. So you really want to get in touch with you so that you can then pick up on those signals when something's off.
Oh, that's so good. And I feel like there's been a theme in the past few episodes around self-awareness. And so I think it's something we all should, try and at least have a moment throughout the day to find time to be self-aware. Any final thoughts on this topic? Any words of advice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had to do, I know we talked about operating solely logically and not connecting, emotionally to what's going on inside of us. One of the things that had really helped me is I set little check-in alarms, and I would just ask my heart, like, okay, like what's going on? Is there anything you need? And it sounds silly, but what it did is it actually helped me build connection with myself and trust with myself, so that when my heart's trying to tell me there's something going on, it isn't afraid to tell me. Like it's like, hey, you're going to listen when I'm saying, hey, I have a pain here that needs to be met. I have something going on internally that feels off. There's shame coming up here, and I don't know why. Just really getting connected with ourselves is something that can help you. And so for me, like I said, I would put alarms on my phone, and I would just check in once in a while, because it helped me recognize that I do have other emotions going on instead of just logically solving everything that's in front of me.
I love it. And I think that's probably something I am going to take away from you and start pausing and having these like self heart checks. What do I need? What am I feeling?
Mhm.
And pausing to really, just take a moment and probably just debrief all of that which comes at you from the time you start interacting with other people in the morning to the time you finally get that time for yourself. It is so much that happens to us throughout the day. And for folks who are looking to attain a new level of financial freedom in your life, and you believe that entrepreneurship is the vehicle for you to live free with your time and have more access to capital, you want to make sure that you connect with me at I Am and More, or visit my website at iamandmore.com, where I will not only hold your hand and make sure you have what you need to start, structure, and grow your business, but also make sure you're legally protected and that you don't have to come to a place where you have a moment of a temper tantrum because you didn't start right. And so, Brittany, we honor you. We thank you for coming on the journey to more to pour to this audience. And I'm sure I will get great feedback and I will share that with you. Thank
Oh, thank
you.
you so much.